She laughed. Lighten up or go home. You're basically my charity case. At dinner with her rich friends, I said, okay, quietly paid the bill. Let her keep living rent-free in my house. Hours later, her key didn't fit the door, and she still hasn't figured out. I'm 33, union electrician, make about $85K a year. Not rich, but I work steady, own my house outright, and I'm proud of what I do. My girlfriend Holland is 28, works in marketing, makes decent money but nothing crazy. We've been together 8 months, living together for the last 3. Here's what I should have picked up on earlier. Holland grew up with money, trust fund money. Her parents bought her college, her first car, her apartment deposit, the whole safety net thing I never had. She's never worried about bills or wondered if she could afford something. At first, I thought it was cute how different our backgrounds were. She'd never met anyone who actually worked with their hands for a living. I'd never dated someone who could just decide to take a weekend trip to wine country without checking their bank account first, but over the past few months, I started noticing these little comments. Always framed as jokes, always when we were around her friends. Trent's so handy. Good thing, since he can't afford to hire anyone. At least I never have to worry about him leaving tools around expensive things. He's teaching me so much about budgeting. Apparently some people actually track their spending. Each time, I'd feel this punch in my stomach, but she'd laugh, and her friends would laugh, and I'd force myself to laugh too because I didn't want to be the sensitive boyfriend who couldn't take a joke. Last Saturday was her friend Madison's birthday party. Expensive restaurant, everyone dressed up, the whole thing. I wore my best shirt, tried to fit in with her crowd of marketing executives and trust fund kids. Everything was fine until the conversation turned to work stress. Everyone's complaining about their office jobs, their demanding clients, their impossible deadlines. Then Holland jumped in. Well, at least when Trent gets laid off, we'll know why. Those hands are only good for manual labor. The whole table laughed, 6 people looking at me like I was the entertainment. Like my job was some kind of punchline. I felt my face get hot, but I stayed calm. Holland, I need you to stop making jokes about my work. The table went quiet for about 2 seconds. Then Holland rolled her eyes. God, it's just a joke. You're being way too sensitive. Lighten up or go home. I looked at this woman I'd been sharing my bed and my house with, who'd just told me in front of her friends that I should leave if I didn't like being the punchline of her humor. Okay, I said quietly. I put my napkin on the table, stood up, and walked out. Holland didn't follow me. Didn't text that night. Didn't call Sunday. Monday evening, she came home like nothing had happened. You missed a fun night after you left, she said, like I'd just stepped out early instead of being humiliated out of my chair. That's when something clicked for me. This wasn't about one bad joke or one rough evening. This was about someone who saw my work, something I'm genuinely proud of, as material for her entertainment. I told her we needed to talk about Saturday night. There's nothing to talk about, she said. You overreacted to some harmless teasing. My friends think you're too serious. Your friends think I'm beneath you. That's ridiculous. Then why is my job always the punchline? She couldn't answer that. Or wouldn't. We've been walking on eggshells for 3 days now. She keeps making comments about me being moody and holding grudges. I keep thinking about that moment at dinner when she chose her friend's laughter over my dignity. I'm starting to realize that someone who truly respects you doesn't need an audience to tear you down, even as a joke. Edit. For those asking why I stayed so long, the comments started small and grew gradually. It's easier to ignore a pattern when you're in the middle of it. Edit 2. Yes, she lives in my house. Has been for 3 months now. Rent-free. Update 1. So I finally figured out that some people will never respect you no matter how much you tolerate. And honestly, it took Holland's reaction to my boundaries to see who she really is. Tuesday night, I tried to have a real conversation about the dinner party and the pattern of her making jokes about my job. I need you to understand something, I told her. When you make fun of my work in front of your friends, it's not harmless teasing. It hurts. Her response was immediate. You're being incredibly dramatic about this. They're just jokes. Would you joke about their jobs? Would you mock Madison's marketing work? Or call Jake's finance job manual labor? That's different. How? She couldn't explain how it was different, which told me everything I needed to know. I asked her to stop, not to change her sense of humor or walk on eggshells, just to stop using my career as comedy material when we're with other people. "Fine," she said, in that tone that meant it wasn't fine at all. "I'll just never mention your job again. Happy." "Holland, I'm not asking you to never mention it. I'm asking you to mention it respectfully. I don't know what you want from me here, Trent. Either I can be myself around my friends, or I have to police everything I say to protect your feelings." That framing, that respecting me meant she couldn't be herself, really clarified where we stood. Wednesday evening, she went out with those same friends. Came home around midnight, tipsy and defensive. "Madison thinks you're controlling," she announced as she got into bed. "She said you're trying to change my personality because you can't handle a strong woman." "Did you tell Madison what the conversation was actually about?" "I told her you got upset over some harmless jokes, and now you're trying to control how I talk to my friends." So she'd reframed my request for basic respect as controlling behavior, and her friends had validated that interpretation. "What did you tell them the jokes were about?" I asked. "Just general teasing. They know how sensitive you are." She hadn't told them that the general teasing was specifically about mocking my job and calling me too poor to hire help. She'd made it sound like I was the problem for having thin skin. Thursday morning, she was getting ready for work when she made another comment. "I'm going to lunch with the girls today. I'll try not to mention that my boyfriend can't take a joke." That's when I realized this wasn't going to get better. She wasn't going to stop, and she wasn't going to respect my boundaries. She was going to keep presenting me as the oversensitive boyfriend who couldn't handle her humor. "Holland, I think we need to take a break." She stopped putting on her earrings and looked at me like I'd said something shocking. "A break? Over this? Over the fact that you won't stop doing something that hurts me, and you're now telling your friends I'm controlling for asking?" "You are being controlling. You're trying to change how I interact with my friends." "I'm trying to change how you talk about me to your friends." She stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed her purse. "Fine. If you want a break, we'll take a break. But don't expect me to come crawling back apologizing for being myself." She left for work, and I spent the day thinking about that phrase, being myself. If being herself meant using my career as a punchline, if being herself meant dismissing my feelings when I got hurt, if being herself meant reframing my boundaries as controlling behavior, then maybe being herself wasn't compatible with being my girlfriend. Holland came home Friday evening like nothing had happened. "I'm going out with Madison and the crew tomorrow night," she said. "You can come if you promise not to be weird about anything." The casual way she dismissed our entire conversation, the assumption that I'd just fall in line if she allowed me to join her friends again, made something click for me. This woman was never going to respect me. She was always going to see my job as beneath her, my boundaries as inconveniences, and my feelings as obstacles to her social life. Saturday morning, while she was at her yoga class, I made a decision that probably should have been obvious weeks ago. Edit. For those asking about the break conversation, it lasted about 5 minutes and ended with her basically dismissing everything I'd said and planning another night out with the same people. Edit 2. Several people have pointed out that she's living in my house rent-free while mocking my income. That irony wasn't lost on me. Update 2. So I finally figured out what happens when you choose self-respect over keeping the peace. And honestly, Holland's reaction showed me exactly who she'd been all along. Saturday, while Holland was at yoga, I called my brother Cole to talk through what had been happening. Cole's also in the trades. He's a plumber, and he's dealt with similar attitudes from people who think blue-collar work is somehow lesser. "Let me get this straight," he said after I explained the situation. "She's living in your house rent-free, you own the place outright, and she's making jokes about you being poor?" When he put it like that, the absurdity became clear. "What are you gonna do?" he asked. "I think I'm done." "About time. You want help changing the locks?" I spent Saturday afternoon thinking about it. Not about whether to end things, but about how. Holland had made it clear she wasn't going to respect my boundaries, wasn't going to stop using my job as comedy material, and wasn't going to take responsibility for how her jokes affected me. More than that, she'd shown me that she fundamentally didn't respect what I do for a living. And if someone doesn't respect how you earn your living, they don't respect you. Sunday morning, Holland went to brunch with Madison and her crew, the same people who'd laughed while she mocked my work, the same people who apparently thought I was controlling for asking for basic respect. While she was out, I packed her things. Not angrily, not carelessly, just methodically. All her clothes, her toiletries, her books, her decorative pillows that had gradually taken over my living room. I put everything in boxes and bags, organized and ready to go. Then I called a locksmith. Holland came home around 4 p.m. to find her key didn't work. Her first reaction was confusion, then panic. She called my phone from the front porch. "Trent, what's going on? My key won't work." "Your stuff is on the porch," I said. "We're done." "What do you mean we're done? You can't just lock me out." "It's my house, Holland. You don't pay rent, your name isn't on the lease, and you don't live here anymore." I could hear her trying to process this through the door. "This is about Saturday, about the dinner party. You're ending our relationship over a few jokes?" "I'm ending our relationship because you don't respect me or what I do, and you've made it clear that's not going to change." She started crying then, but not the sad crying you'd expect from someone losing a relationship. It was angry crying, frustrated crying. "You can't just throw me out. I live here. You stayed here. There's a difference. I'll call the police." "Call them. Explain that your boyfriend, who owns his house outright, changed the locks after you spent months mocking his job to your trust fund friends." The silence that followed told me she was realizing the legal reality of her situation. "Trent, please. We can work this out. I'll stop making jokes. I'll apologize to your friends." "I don't have friends who need your apology. They already respect what I do for a living." "You're being ridiculous. Everyone teases their boyfriends. Everyone doesn't live rent-free in their boyfriend's house while calling him too poor to hire help." That seemed to hit her. For the first time in our entire relationship, Holland was quiet. "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked finally. "Madison's got a spare room, doesn't she? Time to learn what splitting rent feels like." She spent another 10 minutes on my porch, alternating between begging and threatening, but I didn't open the door. Around 6 p.m., Madison's car pulled up. I watched through the window as Holland loaded her boxes, crying and gesturing angrily toward my house. Madison looked confused by the whole situation, like she couldn't understand how the poor electrician had ended up with all the power. They drove away, and my house was quiet for the first time in 3 months. Edit. For those asking about tenant rights, she never paid rent, never had mail delivered here, never changed her address. Legally, she was a guest who overstayed her welcome. Edit 2. The locksmith was impressed by how organized everything was. "Usually these situations are messier," he said. "Sometimes doing things calmly and methodically sends a clearer message than drama." Final update. So I finally figured out the difference between someone who loves you and someone who just tolerates you while enjoying your benefits. And honestly, Holland's reaction to being cut off showed me everything I needed to know. The first few days after changing the locks were peaceful in a way I hadn't experienced in months. No one making comments about my dirty hands, or joking about my budget. No walking on eggshells wondering what aspect of my life would become comedy material next. Tuesday, Holland started texting. First apologetic messages about how she'd misunderstood my concerns and wanted to work through this like adults. When I didn't respond, the messages got more desperate. "I can't believe you'd throw away 8 months over some miscommunication. Your brother's wife thinks you're overreacting. Even she said couples tease each other. Madison's couch is uncomfortable and she's charging me $800 for her spare room." That last text was particularly revealing. Holland was discovering what market-rate rent felt like for the first time in months. Wednesday, she called my work. Actually called my union hall looking for me, which crossed a line I didn't even know existed. She seemed pretty upset, my foreman told me. Said there was some kind of emergency with your relationship. The emergency, it turned out, was that Madison could only let her stay until the weekend, and Holland didn't have first month's rent and deposit saved up for a new place. 8 months living rent-free and she never saved any money, my brother Cole said when I told him. That tells you everything about how temporary she thought the arrangement was. Thursday evening, Holland showed up at my house with Madison in tow. I could see them through the window, Holland pointing and gesturing while Madison looked uncomfortable. I didn't answer the door. Friday, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Turns out it was Madison. Holland asked me to reach out. She's really sorry about the job comments and wants to make things right. Can you at least talk to her? I replied. She had the chance to make things right when I asked her to stop. She chose her friend's laughter over my dignity. That's not something you apologize your way out of, Madison texted back. She was just joking around. You know she didn't mean anything by it. If someone you've been living with for free makes jokes about your income being too low to afford help, how would you interpret that? Madison didn't respond. This weekend brought the most interesting development. Holland's friend Jake, one of the guys who'd laughed hardest at the dinner party, reached out directly. Hey man, Madison told us what happened. Holland's been staying with different people all week. She's pretty torn up about this. I'm sorry she's struggling to find housing, I replied. But that's not my problem anymore. Look, we all joke around with each other. She was just treating you like one of the group. By mocking my job? Do you guys mock each other's careers? Long pause. That's different. We all work similar jobs. So you were treating me like one of the group by making sure I knew I wasn't actually in the group. Another pause. Maybe we could all hang out sometime? Clear the air? I'm good, thanks. Enjoy your group. The thing that's become clear over this past week is how differently Holland and her friends viewed our relationship versus how I did. To me, Holland was someone I was building something with, someone I'd invited into my home and my life, someone whose opinion mattered to me. To them, I was Holland's project, the blue-collar boyfriend who was amusing to have around until he got too serious about being respected. When Holland's friend group met me, they didn't see an electrician who owns his home at 33. They saw someone beneath their social circle who should be grateful for their attention. And Holland went along with that narrative because it made her feel superior to be slumming it with someone from my background. The final confirmation came yesterday. Holland texted from another new number. I've been thinking about everything, and I realize I should have been more supportive of your career. If you're willing to work on this, I promise to be more considerate going forward. Even in her apology, she couldn't actually acknowledge what she'd done. It was still framed as her not being supportive enough, not her actively mocking and diminishing my work for her friend's entertainment. I didn't respond, and I won't. Today marks exactly 1 week since I changed those locks, and I've learned something important about the difference between loneliness and being alone. Loneliness is being in a room full of people who don't respect you. Being alone is having space to remember who you are when no one's trying to diminish you. My house is quiet, but it's not lonely. It's peaceful. No one's here to roll their eyes at my work clothes or make jokes about my budget. No one's here to reframe my boundaries as character flaws. I've got my self-respect back, and it turns out that's worth more than having someone to split groceries with. For the first time in months, I'm proud of what I do and where I live without having to defend it or downplay it. That's not something I'm willing to negotiate away again. Holland's learning what it costs to live without someone subsidizing your lifestyle while you mock their income. I'm learning what it feels like to be respected in my own home again. One of those lessons seems more valuable than the other. Edit. For those asking if I'll take her back if she really changes, someone who needs to lose their free housing to realize they should respect their partner's job never actually learned to respect it. They just learned consequences. Edit 2. My neighbor Riley said she's been watching different cars drop Holland off all week while she tries to get her remaining stuff. That girl's learning about real life pretty quickly, she said. Sometimes the best lessons are the ones that come with immediate, practical consequences. Edit 3. To anyone tolerating jokes at your expense from partners or their friends, there's a difference between playful teasing and using your insecurities as entertainment. Trust your gut about which one you're experiencing.